Maccabees, heroes after prophets. Key words in this lesson. Maccabees from Latin. That means the hammer. Hebrew. Ma'asha, which means pressure. Literally, she has pressed. Hellenized Judean. Word used to express the assimilation, especially by the Hebrew, of Greek speech, manners, and culture from the 4th century BC through the first centuries of the Common Era. The Hellenistic age marks the transformation of Greek society from the localized and introverted city-states to an open, cosmopolitan, and at times exuberant culture that permeated the entire eastern Mediterranean and southwest Asia. Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great himself in 331 BCE and very quickly became the center of commerce and culture of the Hellenistic world under the Ptolemies. Hasmonean. As part of the ancient world conquered by Alexander the Great of Greece, the land remained a Hebrew theocracy under Syrian-based Seleucid rulers. When the Hebrew were prohibited from practicing the law of Yah, and their temple was desecrated as part of an effort to impose Greek-oriented culture and customs on their entire population, the Hebrew rose in revolt, first led by MattithiYAHu of the priestly Hasmonean family, and then by his son Judah the Maccabee. The Hebrews subsequently entered Jerusalem and purified the temple. Maccabees, and concerning the book. The first noun is used with a plural verb, plural meaning many. The members of the Hasmonean family of Hebrew leaders and rulers comprising of the sons of MattithiYAHu and the descendants, and reigning in Judea from 167 to 37 BC. This is 130 years. Especially Judas Maccabeus and his brothers, who defeated Assyrians under Antiochus IV in 165 and rededicated a temple in Jerusalem. The second noun, which is used with a singular verb, just one occurrence, either of the two books of the Apocrypha, First Maccabees or Second Maccabees, that contain the history of the Maccabees. Beginning summary. The name Maccabeus was first applied to Judas, Yehuda, one of the sons of MattithiYAHu. MattithiYAHu means gift of Yah, generally called in English. The Maccabees consist of 4 Hebrew books named after Judas Maccabeus, the hero of the first 2 books. Books do not appear in the Bible, but 1st and 2nd Maccabees are included in the Greek and Latin canon and in the Protestant Apocrypha. Books 1 and 2 provide a vivid account of Hebrew resistance to the religious suppression and Hellenistic cultural assimilation of the Seleucid period, 175 to 135 BC, 40 years span. Continuing, MattithiYAHu, an elder priest then residing at Modin, a city to the west side of Jerusalem, became now the courageous leader of the national Hebrews, and having fled to the mountains, rallied around him a large band of men preparing to fight and die for the covenant and for their descendants, which is us, now violently suppressed by the Romans, which we still are today. First Maccabees chapter 2 verse 49 is recorded of his passing counsel to his sons with reference to the war they were now to carry on. His son Judas the Maccabee, the hammer, succeeded him in 166 as the leader in directing the war of righteousness, which was carried on with great heroism on the part of the Yahudians. Continuing, 1 Maccabees chapter 2 verse 49. Now when the time drew near that MattithiYAHu should die, he said unto his sons, Now have pride and rebuke gotten strength in the time of destruction and the wrath of indignation. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall you receive great honor and an everlasting name. Dates: 590 before Common Era, 333 before Common Era, 172 before Common Era, 170 before Common Era, 142 before Common Era, 63 years before Common Era. 590 years before the Common Era, Zedekiah rebels against King Nebuchadnezzar in 590 BC. Jeremiah the prophet was ultimately imprisoned. In his act of rebellion, King Zedekiah sealed Israel's fate as Babylon returned in force to set siege to Jerusalem. 2 years later, Jerusalem fell to Babylon. Zedekiah, MattithiYAHu, righteousness of Maya. Zedekiah, king of Judah, the last king of Judah. 597 to 586 BC was his rule. B. After rebelling against Nebuchadnezzar II, he was imprisoned in Babylon. Jeremiah chapter 39, first verse. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the 10th month, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army against Jerusalem, and they besieged it. 539 BCE. In 539 BCE, 51 years later after 590 BC, the Persians conquered Babylon, took control of the areas the exiles lived in, and began a 200 years domination of Palestine. Cyrus saw himself as a restorer and granted the Israelites permission to return to Jerusalem shortly after he conquered Babylon. Praise Yah. (172) before the Common Era. Since the reign of the Seleucid king Antiochus III, the Hebrew inhabitants of Judea have extensive autonomy, self-control, under their high priests. However, they are divided into two parties, the Orthodox or traditional Hebrews, and the Reform party that favors Hellenism, being Greek. Antiochus IV supports this party because of financial support they provide him with. In return for a considerable payment, he has permitted the high priest Jason to build a gymnasium in Jerusalem and to introduce the Greek mode of re-education of young Hebrew people. 170 before Common Era, the Hebrew of Judea find that the practice of the Most High statutes and commandments has been outlawed. The rebellion against the Seleucid Greeks and the radical Hellenizers, which are Hebrews who turn Greek, led by the priestly family of the Maccabees under MattithiYAHu, gift of Yah, and his sons. 142 before Common Era. Simon Maccabeus succeeds his brother Jonathan as high priest of Judea until 135, the second son of Mattathias. He took part in the Hebrew revolt against the Seleucid Empire, led by his brothers Judas Maccabeus and Jonathan Maccabeus. Hebrew autonomy under the Hasmoneans. Autonomy means independence or freedom. 63 years before the Common Era, Rome, Pompey, annexes, which is dominion without permission, the land of Israel. This brought the region under Roman control though they used local leaders to govern. Maccabees break out into civil internal war. A lot of confusion. Under the heathen, villains, Persians, Greeks, and Romans, The Persians. Under the Persians, the Hebrews did okay, able to praise Yah and even to travel around the Persian Empire gathering people the monotheistic one-God way of Yah. 33 BC, Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire. Under the heathens, villains, Persian, Greeks, and Romans. The Greeks, they 1. Established Greek cities run under the democratic Greek model, 2. Imposed the Greek language as the official language for government and the de facto language for commerce, 3. They established Greek schools, gymnasiums, to further the values of Greek culture and build Greek temples, stadiums, and theaters for the same purpose. This is where Hellenized Jew, or better known as Hellenized Greek Hebrew, came into play. I know it's going too fast. Persian, Greeks, and Romans. The Romans will continue to foster Greek culture in the areas of the Eastern Mediterranean under their control. Under the heathen, Antiochus, Alexander, Seleucus, Ptolemy, Herod, and Pompey. Real quick, Antiochus, king of Syria, who greatly extended the Seleucid Empire but was forced to surrender most of Asia Minor to the Romans, attacked the Hebrews and provoked the revolt of the Maccabees. Alexander. Alexander's conquest became known as Hellenism. The Greeks were called Hellenes. After Greek Alexander died, Israel became a part of the empire of Alexander's general, Seleucus. Seleucus, Macedonian army officer, founder of the Seleucid kingdom, by later conquest and under the name of king, became ruler of Syria, or Israel, and the greater part of Asia Minor. His rule extended from 312 to 280, the year of his death. Ptolemy lived in Egypt under Roman rule, takes Jerusalem on the Sabbath. Ptolemy appeared before the city, pretending that he wishes to sacrifice, and seized it on the Sabbath, a day on which the Hebrews did not fight. Ptolemy went to Palestine several times on military expeditions, in the campaign of the year 320 and in that of 312. Herod. Mark Antony elevates Herod to rank of tetrarch, which is any ruler of a fourth part, a division, etc., etc., of Jerusalem and Galilee. Herod is appointed in Rome as king of Judea by the Roman Senate. Although appointed king of Judea in 40 BC, before Common Era, it takes another 3 years before Herod and the army travel to Palestine, Israel, and conquer Jerusalem. Herod becomes sole ruler of Judea, desirous of gaining the favor of the Hebrew, begins to work to restore, expand Jerusalem's temple, which had laid unfinished for about 500 years. Herod the Great dies in Jericho and is buried in Herodium. After his death, Roman Emperor Augustus divided up his kingdoms among some of his sons, as listed here. 65 AD, work on Jerusalem's second temple, also known as Herod's temple, is finally completed. Pompey. In 63 BC, the Romans, under their general Pompey, took over Israel and ruled. In Judea, Pompey intervened in the civil war between Hyrcanus, who supported the Pharisees faction, and Aristobulus, who supported the Sadducees. The armies of Pompey and Hyrcanus laid siege to Jerusalem. After 3 months, the city fell. Pompey then tortured the east, absorbing territories such as Syria into the empire. Under the Maccabees, heroes. Hebrew, Matzbi. Matzbi means general, commander of an army. First up, MattithiYAHu, 175 before Common Era, priest of Modin, revolts against Antiochus. MattithiYAHu, his sons the Maccabees, zealous on behalf of Yah, Judas, Simon, John, Yohanan, and Eleazar, refuses to offer sacrifice that was ordered by Antiochus' official. He and his sons flee to the mountains. MattithiYAHu gives a summary on the brave patriarchs before his death and designates Simon as the thinker and Judas as the warrior captain. Judas. Yehuda, commonly called Judas Maccabees, often called in 2 Maccabees Judas Yehuda, the Maccabee, hammer, held strongly the opinions of his father and proved at least a very capable leader in guerrilla warfare. He defeated several of the generals of Antiochus. Jonathan, the youngest of the sons of MattithiYAHu, succeeded Judas, whose defeat and death had left the patriotic party in a deplorable condition, from which it was rescued by the skill and ability of Jonathan. Good job, Jonathan. Simon was now the only surviving member of the original Maccabean family, and he readily took up the inheritance. John Hyrcanus. Yohanan, Yah is gracious giver. Hyrcanus, one of the sons of Simon, escaped from the plot laid by Ptolemy and succeeded his father, both as prince and high priest. John and Eleazar, two members of the first generation of the Maccabean family. John, Yohanan, Yah is gracious giver, the eldest, was murdered by a marauding tribe. Second, Eleazar met his death 161 BC in the early stages of the Syrian war, shortly before the death of Judas.